So last time we did the BlendSpace1D. This just dealt with moving in one axis, and in BlendSpace2D we're going to move on the x-axis and the y-axis. It's pretty handy when doing top-down or sort of 2.5D, which is a 3D/2D sort of perspective, where we have up movement, down movement, left, right, and then the diagonals, up right, up left, down right, down left. And we may even have different sorts of positions, like idle positions, which will give you an up idle, down idle, right idle, left idle. You get the idea. I'm going to try to find some sprites, or even a sprite sheet that has at least one of these positions. Let's call it walk maybe, or run maybe, and we're going to work with those in this project. Let's close this off and let's create a new scene called BlendSpace2D. And let's save this. And of course we'll need a script for the BlendSpace2D as well. And let's save it in the default place as we usually do. And let's save the project. I actually found an OK one on Open Game Art. I'll put a link up for you to download if you want to as well. It's also free. It seems to have different positions, as you can see here. Let me just zoom in a bit. We have the down position, which is facing towards us. We have the left, the right, and the up position with the back facing us, and we also have several diagonals here. So this will work fine. I believe this is just a walking animation sprite sheet, so you can go ahead and download that and we can import it into our project. But remember, this is a sprite sheet, and sprite sheets cannot be used by the AnimationTree. So of course we'll have to go across to Krita or something and cut it into appropriate parts. So here I have Krita open, Krita. It's a free program, and I already opened the Stellar. Of course we go into the image and we're going to go down to image split. Click that, and we want to make lines wherever there are spaces. So the lines going down, we want 3 lines in between, and the lines going horizontally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see the preview here. So our horizontal lines will be, we counted 7. Let's put 6. You notice here the lines are going across the figures, so let's raise it to 7. That looks better. And the vertical lines, let's raise that to 3. So 7 and 3 looks good here. Let's click apply, and when we click apply, it's going to ask where to save it. I already have it saved in a folder, and I'm just going to import those just like we did in the last video. Just drag them across. So I'm going to cancel this because I already have it saved. Back in Godot, I'm just going to create a folder, and let's call it 2D sprites. And we're just going to drag all of these, Control A to select all in the folder, and drag it across to our 2D sprites folder. And we can close this off now. And as you can see here, we have all the sprites that we need here. Every now and then, we may want to reference the original sprite sheet, because what we did is we split it into separate parts, because AnimationTree does not work with sprite sheets, but we made separate sprite 2Ds to work with. I'm going to go back into my 2D scene. It's the same procedure we want to do. We want to put a sprite 2D. We want to put an animation player and an animation tree. let's leave the animation tree for last. And then the sprite2D, we did the same thing as we did before. I just want to show something here, and as I said, it's the same procedure as the last time. Let's just drag the different positions just because I want to point out something here. Because sometimes when you're making your animations, you will get a jump skip sort of motion, and that's because we didn't line up our sprites properly. When we're doing our sprites for this walk motion, we're going from the standing position to the right foot, back to the standing position to the left foot. And when you run this animation and add a loop, it's supposed to loop back, but if it doesn't, you may have to put the standing position again at the end in order for it to loop around properly. So it goes from standing foot, standing foot, standing, and this will automatically go back into the standing here. So there's a better merging of the two sprites, the beginning and the ending sprites, that makes it look seamless. So as an example, we'll just do the first one quickly. Let's delete all these sprites here. We don't need these other sprites. That was just to illustrate. And we have the animation player here. Make sure your animation tab is selected at the bottom here. And we're going to do what we did the last time in the animation player. Animation tab at the bottom here. We're going to add our animations. So I'm going to do the walk up, walk down, walk left, walk right, walk whichever diagonals, and we'll come back to this and fill it. Okay, so you'll notice here I add these animations by going into animation, add new, and now I have walk down, left, right, up, down, left, down, right, up, left, up, right, the diagonals. And we're going to work with these. We're going to populate these as we did in the last tutorial. So we should be able to do these without any problems. It's just a little bit of work, but it's fine. I'm just going to drag what we have across here, and I'm going to go through the walk down because that's our first 4 sprites. So let's click walk down here, and at the top left hand side click the sprite2D, and you'll see the little key is here now. Let's drag the first sprite and click the little key again. Let's zoom in a bit. When I tested this, 0.03 seconds was a good interval, so I'm going to use that 0.03 and dragging the second walk, and 0.06 dragging the third walk, at 0.09 dragging the last walk. But if we run this, you will see, let's bring it down a bit and change the offset to not centered, and we could probably zoom in or raise the size of this if we like, but I'm going to leave it at its original size. Let's loop this, sorry, so we can see it playing. So you notice that jump skip there. If we move this timeline to 0.9, let's see how it runs now. So it looks like she's skipping. You're not really seeing the last animation pose. So as I said before, we may want to add the standing pose again to get that last one. So let's just add a next 0.3 interval to the end here, which will bring it to 1.2. And let me just use the initial stellar walk as the first one. And let's see how that works. So that looks more natural. She goes back to the standing pose, which immediately loops around to the standing pose, the initial standing pose, and then the walk-in movement, and then the walk-in animation continues again. Let's just save this, and we're going to do this with all the other sprites. As I said, you may have to reference the sprite sheet again to see what position we have next. I'm going to do this without recording because we already know how to do this, and I'll come back when I'm done with the animations. And for an idle, we have no dedicated idle sprite. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to probably make some sort of glow effect. Ideally, I'm supposed to do all the different directions. Maybe when she's pointing down, up, left, right, up, left, up, right, all those sort of things. But I'm just going to do one for now. If you want to do the idle, you can probably do all and see how it looks. So if she's facing a certain direction, maybe she points that direction. So I'm just going to add a new animation here called, we'll just call it idle down, because she's facing down, in case we want to add the others afterwards. And let's leave it at 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the modulate of the sprite2D. Let's close off all these things here. And under visibility, we have the modulate here. So at 0, we're going to set it to what it is right now. Just make sure idle down is selected here. And let's create that. So it makes a modulate timeline. And let's give it a slow glow. So like around 0.5, we're going to change the modulate into, there's something called intensity here. So let's see how it looks when we brighten it. Okay, so around 2.1, maybe 2.2. We can manually put it in. If you go down, it's going to give you a darker modulate rather than brighter. So let's just set that now. And at 1, we're going to just copy, click the first one and Control C and Control V. So copy and paste, and let's see how this looks. That's nice. Let's put a loop on it. That looks really good. So when she stops, when we stop pressing the arrow buttons and so on, we're going to apply this glow, and that will be our idle animation. Let's save this. Okay, so all we have to do now is add our animation tree and our script. So let's go back to the root node and add the animation tree. Of course, the tree root will be BlendSpace2D this time. And in this BlendSpace2D, let's just go up a bit so we can see a little better. In this BlendSpace2D, we're going to have to place the different animations as we already made from the animation player. We have all the different walk directions and the idle down. So let's go back to the animation tree, the graph, and we have to assign our animation player. So just click the animation player here, just like we did in the last video. And now we can click create points here and start adding points. So let's do the right side, add animation, walk right, add animation, walk left. Don't forget, if your grid lock is not on, it's not going to lock to the grid as cleanly as we want to. At the top here, this is something you have to remember. Remember, the y-axis is different from other gaming engines. In Godot, our y-axis pointing downwards is positive and upwards is negative. So at the top here would not be moving up, this will be moving down. Just remember that, or else you're going to have your animation moving in the wrong direction and you'll want to know why. So up is down and down is up. And you'll see these triangles created here. Same thing here. Down is up, so we're going to walk up. And now at the diagonals, we're going to start adding the diagonals. Remember, down is up and up is down. So this will be right, down, walk, down, right. There we go. This will be down, left, down, left. Oh, let's move this up here. This will be up, left, and this will be up, right. And let's just try that out using the crosshairs and see what happens. Yeah, so when we move up, she's moving down, which is what we want, the opposite direction. And when we move down, she's moving up. When we move left, she moves left. Right, she moves right. We have our diagonal movements, and they all seem to be working. At the very center now, let's just create a point at the very center, and we're going to add the idle down. So now, if we try moving our cursor, we'll see as we approach the center, she starts to blink. And that's supposed to be our idle position. Now all we have to do is add the script code to connect it to this animation tree. Let's save this. Okay, now let's go into our script. Let's just widen this a bit and close the animation tree. In our script, let's just create a variable to reference the animation tree so we don't have to keep on typing animation tree. So let's just go to the beginning here and put at onReady var tree, just to make life simple, is equal to our animation tree. So if we close this back, we can just drag it across here, and there we go. In fact, if anytime we change the structure of our scene here and the animation tree is not in the same place, all we have to do is once move it across here, and it will be referenced as tree alone in the code. It makes our code a little more robust. And let's use our physics process. Now here we want to calculate vector 2 that we can use for our movement. So let's just create an vector 2 object. Let's call it input vector maybe, and this will be of a type vector 2. We can type it if we want as well here using the colon and put vector 2, but I'm just going to leave this as is. Here inside this vector 2, we're going to use a function called getActionStrength. So let me start typing. Basically what we're going to do is get the right side movement, minus it from the left side movement, and the down movement, and minus it from the up movement. There are absolutes in the graph from 0 to 1. So when it's right, it's not left. So when it's right, it's 1 for the right and 0 for the left. So if you minus that, let me start typing, you'll understand what I'm trying to say. So here's input dot get action strength. And why are we using action strength? It's because if we're using, let's widen this, the action strength, you have to give them the string name. In our case, it'll be UI right, and an optional bool to see if it's an exact match. So let's just put UI right here, UI right. There we go. It's a built-in direction function, and we're going to minus. Let's just copy this here. Control C. Remember, this is right and left, so this is our X axis. And so what we're calculating here is our X position. And let's just paste this. And instead of right here, we're going to put left. There we go. Now, if this is our X value, so we have to put a comma and then do our Y value with it down and up. So in this case, let's just click the get action strength so we can see this. So get action strength returns a value between 0 and 1, representing the intensity. And what this says here, remember right is +1 if you look at the animation tree, right is +1 on the x-axis and left is -1 on the x-axis. You look at the bottom here, you can see that x here, 1 and -1. So in this case, if we're moving right, the get action strength will be anywhere between 0 and 1 on the right hand side, but because the values go from 0 to 1, there will be a 0 on the left hand side. So any value you have, your -0 will be equal to that value. The opposite takes place and gives us a negative value. So if we have only movement on the left side, that means the right side is 0. So whatever you minus from it here, it will be 0 minus that will give us a negative value, and therefore give us a negative value for x, which is exactly what we need on our scale here, in our animation tree scale. And let's just copy this whole expression here, Control C, and we're just going to put it bottom here. If you notice, the errors are gone, but we need to do the up and down. So we're going to do UI up. Sorry, my mistake. Remember, going down is positive. So we're going to do the UI down minus the UI up. And same explanation as we did earlier. This will give you our Y value. So this is basically a vector 2 with an X value and a Y value that is gotten from the movement of a joypad or analog control. When we do this project, we're going to use the keyboard, and that goes directly from 0 to 1, and there's no in between. We could add loop to see the difference, or maybe we might add a joystick add-on. We can go into Asset Lib and probably download one, but let's deal with that when we get there. Don't forget, if we are the center, let's just close off the animation tree. If we are the center, we want our vector to be 0. So if our input vector is equal to vector 2 0, that basically translates to x is 0 and y is 0, 0, 0. We want to set our tree. Let's open this back up again, and let's get into our animation tree on the inspector here, and we're going to drag our parameters in. Blend position, and we want to put our value to a vector 2 0 dot 0. So if our input vector is 0, we're setting our animation tree position to 0 as well. Other than that, we're just setting the tree to whatever other values we have there, but we're going to normalize the input so there's no magnitude. It's just everything, just all distances are equal to 1. We mentioned normalize in another video before. So let's drag the parameter in again, the blend position, and we're going to set that to the input vector, and we're going to normalize whatever we get from that input vector. And that's it. That's the code. We're getting a warning here. More than likely it's because delta, we're not using delta, so let's just put an underscore before it, and our warning is gone. Let's save this, and we'll try to run it. Okay, so let's just run this and see what happens. So far, no errors. She's idle, so she's blinking. Let's move right. Let's select the screen. Let's move right. She moves right. Let's move left. Up. Down. When we stop, she starts to blink. Diagonals are working. Yes. Great. So everything seems to be working here, and when we stop, she starts blinking to indicate that we are in an idle state. Ideally, you may want to make different directions. You may want to make her face in different directions, like up, down, left, right, and diagonals, and apply the blinking to that. And rather than be exact 0 on the animation tree in the center here, we can have like an offset, maybe 0.1 on the x-axis and 0.1 on the y-axis. If we want smaller values, we can take off the grid lock and make smaller values for the x and y. But basically, if we want, we can make it 0.1 here. So basically what we can do, we can move this cursor around to see our values, and just look. If we move right here on the y-axis, this will be 0.1 and the x-axis will be 0. So we can use this value here to go down, remember opposite directions, so we can have her facing us, which is the actual idle animation that we already have here, and blinking. And we can make another one for facing away from us and blinking, then one facing left and blinking, to facing right and blinking, and then the diagonals. So we'll have a smaller structure like this big structure we have here, right here. So when we do move towards that, anywhere inside that will give us an idle movement. And the importance of that is sometimes we have console controls that they don't completely reset to exact 0 because of some sort of stick drift. So even though if there's a slight stick drift, our idle animations are going to work. So as you can see, this one was relatively simple because it's just built on the last video that we did with the BlendSpace1D, and this is just similar to the BlendSpace1D, but rather than one axis, we're using 2 axes, and we're adding diagonal movements as well. I hope this was informative, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.